Lemken Solitaire and Equalizer seeders and planters offer disruptive innovation like vertical banding, dry and or liquid onboard fertilizer, and great prices. Go to lemkendemo.com for more information and to request a demo.
I'm Shaun Haney, and this is RealAg on the Weekend. Let's get real and get connected with the week that was in Canadian agriculture. RealAg on the Weekend starts now. What a wild week it has been in Canadian agriculture. Hey, I'm your host, Shaun Haney, and welcome, of course, to another episode of RealAg on the Weekend. It is great to be with you here today. Hope you had yourself a great week, and we had some snowfall. Spring just seems to tease. It's teasing us. Mother Nature just sort of dangles spring and then boom. Nope. Maybe you should. It's not the end of March. It's actually the end of February. And, yeah, but we'll take the moisture. Frost kind of getting out of the ground, and this is the kind of moisture that we will indeed take this time of the year. Well, today on the show, we got a product spotlight with Ivor Bernatsky from Lemken. We're going to talk to them. We're also going to hear from Arlan Suderman of StoneX, talking about some of the markets. We're also going to hit on today, potentially, some commentary as well from Wasko, the Gateway Livestock Exchange, and the beef market update as well. If you have any feedback on today's program, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also, of course, find Real Agriculture across all the different social media platforms. You're also more than welcome to call the RealAg feedback line. That number is 855-776-6147. We have a federal election underway. What a week. Like, you just think about what happens in a 7-day period in 2025, and it feels like it's what used to happen in a month. And I mean that. Like, we've only been in election mode here in Canada since Monday. And wow, all of the momentum is with the Liberals right now. And probably a lot of Western Canadian Conservatives sort of scratching their heads saying, what is going on here? But this Carney train, whether you like it or not, it does not look like a honeymoon. It looks kind of real. And it's been interesting to see some of what also has changed is the reaction from President Trump towards Prime Minister Carney. Very fascinating. And President Trump endorsed him and basically said he likes working with liberals better. He didn't care for the conservative leader, whatever his name was. That's how he referred to it. Now we've got on Friday the press conference where President Trump referred to him as Mark. So you got a lot of Canadians that flipped from Poilievre to Carney because they felt the conservatives would just roll over to Trump. And Carney would, talk tough. And now we've got Trump basically saying, hey, I really want to work with Carney, and he's referring to him by first name. We're buddies. Amigos. What a crazy world we live in. I'm just telling you. It is hard to keep track of all this that is underway. But what we're seeing is right now it looks like anywhere from a 30 to a 50 seat win lead for the Carney Liberals in this federal election. Hey, I want to make sure though that we understand some of the ramifications and some of the issues that are being discussed from a trade perspective. Real Agriculture, in partnership with CAPI, did a webinar on Thursday. Now, that webinar is posted at realagriculture.com. It is also on the Real Agriculture YouTube channel. And it was great. We had Travis Taves, former Minister of Finance in the province of Alberta, also former president of the Canadian Cattle Association. He was on the panel. Tyler Bjornson, who does a ton of work in the grain and oilseed and protein sector in Canada. He is super knowledgeable. He was on the panel. We also had Greg Dowd. Now, he's the current president and CEO of the National Milk Producers Federation, and Ambassador Dowd is the former chief ag negotiator at the USTR under Robert Lighthizer in the first Trump administration. Like, this dude's been in the room. It was great to have Ambassador Dowd on the webinar. We also had Oliver Ward, head trade director trade reporter at AgriPulse. he is locked in on the technicalities of trade. So I encourage you to check out that webinar for sure, as we covered a lot of ground on that one. And it's nice talk between Canada and the U.S. right now. But, we're not out of the woods, I would say that. And both, honestly, it seems like all three countries are headed towards this USMCA renegotiation. And all three parties our countries seem to be saying, hey, you know what? That wouldn't be a bad thing. Talking's good. Michael Harvey from CAFTA had said that to me. There's nothing wrong with talking. Talking's progress. So I think that's how all three countries are looking at it. But what I've seen here is a bit of a divergence in the real agriculture audience. And I'm going to put people in buckets, 4 different buckets as it applies to Canada's economic future. Okay. And I want you to think about which bucket you fit in. So the first bucket, people that believe that dropping interprovincial trade barriers, that is the key to success. Really, it would allow us to not have to be so focused on the external markets if we actually allowed ourselves to trade with each other more proficiently and better. So there's that group. Okay. Then there's the group that believe that Europe is the solution here. Forget about the Americans. Forget about China. Let's focus on Europe. They think like us. They talk like us. That would be it would be on parallel mental paths more. It would be easier to do. And Carney and Macron last week in Paris, people like that. So that's that camp. And then there's the camp that say, hey, listen, forget about the Americans. China's the future partner. That's really, they could be, we could think about all the opportunity to move commodities to China and what that could represent for prosperity going forward. And, that's Canada's that's the next world economic leader. And that's where we need to be attaching our wagon. I'm not sure I can get behind that one, but there are people thinking that way. And then there are the people that are saying, hey, listen, it's really about the U.S. And whether you like it or you don't like it, the reality is that Canada's economic future starts and finishes with the Americans. No matter what you think about President Trump, no matter what you think about the current trade agenda, at the end of the day, our little red wagon is tied to that economic machine, whether we like it or not. So that's kind of how the 4 camps settle out. Now, there can be some crossover, of course. All these are not mutually exclusive of each other, but I think it's definitely something for you to think about. Which of those camps? What do you think is the avenue we should be pursuing the most aggressively? And what's interesting is that some would say all of the above. Now, the question is, though, can it be all of the above? Is that possible? Or are we going to have to, as Canada, choose between Canada choose China versus the U.S.? Well, we have to choose between the U.S. versus Europe. I think there's going to be some, in this multipolar world, I think it's a little bit more complicated than, hey, we're going to be doing business with everybody. I think things are going that could be the big change on the other side of this, is not what the relationship with the Americans looks like. It's what's Canada's relationship with the rest of the world at the end of this. And you're going to hear a little bit about Fortress North America. We may get into that a little bit when we hear from Arlan Suderman. But one of my speculations or my theories here is on the other side of this for Canada is Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. thinking more as an economic zone, thinking more about themselves as Fortress North America. Supply chains are not integrated. They're complementary. And as complementary supply chains, we're leveraging the assets and the strengths of all 3 countries to really leap forward economically as an economic unit. I think Fortress North America is a very good case scenario for Canada. But that's going to come with some strings attached. That's going to come with potentially increased and more tariffs on China versus less. So if you didn't like the EV tariffs, and if you don't like the retaliation that China has made on Canadian canola seed and meal, for example, I'm not sure that you're cheering for Fortress North America, because China becomes less of a trading option potentially going forward. You can see how this is a little bit more complicated, a little bit more 3D chess than some are making it out to be. Is the retaliatory tariffs that China's put on canola meal and oil, pork, field peas, and aquaculture products, it's really not, it's about the EVs, but there's more to it than that. And it starts at the White House and Canada working alongside the Americans in that and trying to, I guess, combat low-priced Chinese auto parts and EVs coming into the country. Fascinating times, indeed. Okay, when we come back, we're going to take a break here on RealAg on the Weekend. We're going to talk to Lemken and find out what they're doing in a product spotlight coming up right after this. If you're serious about agriculture, RealAg's got you covered.
For over 10 years, we've listened to and shared what producers have to say about everything from policy to agronomy from coast to coast.
Keep up with the latest in Canadian agriculture at RealAgriculture.com through daily newsletters and check out our YouTube channel.
Thanks for joining us in the RealAg community as we continue to cover and serve North American agriculture.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
The following is a paid-for product spotlight by Lemken. Joined right now by Ivor Bernatsky. Ivor, it is great to chat with you.
It's great to be with you too, Shaun. Spring's here. Things are getting busy.
Yeah, spring it's coming here. It's in the air, and a lot of producers are getting itchy to put some seed in the ground. Before we get to Lemken's entry into the seeding market, what do you do at Lemken?
I'm the North American marketing manager, so spring for me is a little bit of a longer timeline, all the way from south to north, east to west.
Yeah, and you listen, Lemken's got an extremely strong brand in the tillage market globally. Always enjoy our visit at different farm shows across North America, as well as at Agritechnica every 2 years, and really leading the edge when it comes to technology and tillage. Now, one thing is that some people may not be totally aware of, Lemken's made a very strong entry into the seeding market. Talk about that.
Absolutely. And, certainly I have a background on Lemken. It's really unique to be working for a company that's been around for 245 years. It's a seventh generation family owned company based out of Germany that started by making a plow in 1780. And since then, certainly the company has expanded. And so in the 1990s, Lemken came out with the solitaire seeding equipment through acquisition and then did their own development and engineering. And now that solitaire technology is around the world. There's over 31,000 machines that are out there, have been made and sold since then, but really not well known in North America because we have focused on tillage. The first machines started coming into North America. The tillage machines came in the mid 2000s. And with that, we built out our dealers and our people and our facilities. And we're really holding back a little bit. Some of the machines were a little bit small, a little hard to get people excited about a 4 or 6 meter drill, in Western Canada especially. But things have changed. So we've re-engineered our seeding equipment. So we're now at 9 meters, 29 feet. And as a high speed seeder, we're able to cover the same area as a 60-foot drill. So we're hitting 8 to 10 miles an hour. A 60-foot drill that might be going 4 or 5 miles an hour is going to cover about the same area. So people are open to having that conversation. Then as well, in 2023, Equalizer, a South African planter and seeder manufacturer joined Lemken and brought in some technology that we didn't have. Planter technology that uses precision planting and also a disc drill, an air tine drill, which is really disruptive technology, especially for Western Canada, that we've been able to bring in. They were maxed out selling to 8 countries. When we heard of that opportunity in across the United States, but also in Western Canada, we really wanted to bring that here because it was a lot more than just a different color of seeder technology. It was totally different, disruptive, innovative technology. That's what farmers need. That's what we're committed to bring.
Yeah. And we've got some great videos on RealAgriculture.com featuring that equalizer seeder. So encourage people to check that out. Indeed, I would think, combining the technology that equalizer has, plus the experience that Lemken has when it comes to tillage, and because they're both in the same area or genre where we're concerned about how do we properly move the soil, put the soil back, and in this case, obviously we're making sure that we're putting a seed in the ground as well. There's got to be a lot of synergies there, so to speak.
Absolutely, and it also opens. It brings us forward as an innovative company that, again, over all of those years, and it's very unique to have a company that has that long of a spectrum of agriculture, in their rearview mirror. And when they look forward, they're looking forward in a similar amount of time too. So we know that it's our responsibility to bring in technology that is useful today, but certainly is a tool that might be used by more in the near future. And so with that, all of those sides are very interesting. Being able to do tillage and precision seeding all at the same time. So we eliminate pre-emergent weeds, we level out ruts, we create a seed bed, we plant at 5 or 6.5 inches and deliver a crop that does incredibly well. We have a customer down in Idaho that just won an award for the highest yield spring barley irrigated crop at 201 bushels per acre. That, it started well with that machine, and then it was taken to another level with his agronomy. But, when we're playing in that arena, we know we're bringing something exciting to the marketplace.
Yeah, no, Ivor, is there? How do people find out more information about this equalizer? Is there demo opportunities? Just the dealer network. Give us more before we conclude.
Absolutely, we're looking for demos. We're running demos all across North America, certainly in Western Canada and Ontario. So farmers can go to lemkendemo.com and request a demo. And if they can't get a demo on their farm, we just signed a partnership with Western Crop Innovations in Lacombe, Alberta. And we're going to be planting 4 different cultivars, over 300 acres there, another 100 acres down in Olds. And we'll be part of their field day on July the 22nd. We'll have our machines there. So we'll have seeded with 3 different types of machine, 4 different crops, and we'll be there to answer questions as well. So lemkendemo.com or that field day. And we can answer a lot of questions, as well as being out at the big farm shows, Ag in Motion, and the crop show in Woodstock.
Great stuff. Looking forward to both of those indeed. Ivor, thanks a lot for joining us here today for this product spotlight with Lemken. Really appreciate it.
Excellent. Thanks, Shaun.
Hey, we'll be right back on Real Ag Radio, Rural Radio 147, right after this. I do want to give a big shout out to Real Agriculture fan, just known him for a long time, great guy. Tyler Fulton has been named as the new Canadian Cattle Association president. They had their annual meeting, and Fulton operates a 600 cow-calf pair and small backgrounding operation just south of Birtle in western Manitoba, near the Saskatchewan border. So Tyler could be listening to the show right now. He probably picks it up on the AM dial. Really do appreciate it. He takes over from Nathan Finney, who is a rancher from New Brunswick. I always enjoyed talking to Nathan Finney. And Sheila Hilmer and Doug Roxborough of Alberta, Jake Chaff of Ontario, as well as the past president Bob Lowe have retired from the board. So big congratulations to Tyler Fulton on being the new president of the CCA. Okay, let's take a break. We've got more coming up here on RealAg on the Weekend. We're going to talk markets when we come back. You're listening to RealAg on the Weekend here on 650 CKOM and 980 CGME. RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomic Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues panel with Kelvin Hefner and Lindsay Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. And don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
Farmers, trust is everything. Genesis Fertilizers is making real progress towards providing reliable, locally produced fertilizer. Join the ownership group and protect your bottom line. Learn more at genesisfertilizers.com/credibility.
Welcome back to RealAg on the Weekend here on 980 CJME and 650 CKOM. Let's talk markets. And earlier this week on the RealAg Radio podcast, I had a chance to talk to Arlan Suderman of StoneX. I don't know, there are good commodity analysts, and there's great commodity analysts, and then there's just people that are in the know, and that is Arlan. And I started off my conversation with Arlan Suderman of StoneX talking about trying to get my head wrapped around China and demand in China and the overall economic complex in China. I'm hearing a lot of not good stuff. Arlan has people on the ground in China. Wanted to get a better sense of what he is hearing.
Oh, yes and no. Overall, their economy continues to struggle. It's a real problem. They've been stimulating it since September to varying levels of success. They've seen some sectors where they've poured the greatest stimulus in, see some increases, but the data shows that increase in demand is purely due to the stimulus and nothing more. When you look at consumer confidence levels, they still remain near record low levels, and that's tied closely to the property sector. And the property sector has seen a little bit of an uptick in housing demand, but for the uptick that they've seen, they've only decreased the inventory of housing by less than 5%. So they have some massive problems. And why is housing such a big factor? Here in the United States, we talk about the wealth effect. Consumers continue to spend if their 401ks are growing in value and if their house is growing in value. They feel wealthier, so they spend money. In China, their wealth is tied up in their property. And so if their property is gaining value, they have that wealth effect. If it's losing value, as it has been, then they're contracting their spending. They're fearful, and so they don't spend. And so that's the situation they're finding themselves in. Meanwhile, they're really worried about jobs, with much of the West now putting tariffs and restrictions on various products that they have. That's reducing their manufacturing. And even Russia now has started to put tariffs on EVs that were coming from China. China owned 60% of the car market there prior to this. And so even Russia has now started to pull away from China and buying. So they're in significant trouble right now. Specifically, when it comes to soybeans, for example, this is the time of year they're going to get them from Brazil and Argentina, primarily Brazil, because the currency exchange rates are going to be cheaper. But when it comes to rapeseed meal, that's going to be tight. So I anticipate they'll probably use more soybean meal because that's readily available right now from South America. Most of the other products, they're kind of pulling back somewhat in demand and getting it from elsewhere. I think rapeseed meal is probably the one that's going to hurt them the most, but they're still sticking with those tariffs on Canada.
Yeah, do you see them having these tariffs in place for a long period of time, or is this a summer sort of fling, or is it just too early to tell?
Last time they did this, it seemed like they did it until it really got painful at home, and I anticipate that to be the case as well. And I think that's the way most countries approach tariffs. They'll do it until it becomes real painful at home and they're losing political clout. Of course, political strength in China is something different than it is here, but it's still a factor overall. And right now, China finds itself increasingly put in a corner, being isolated, and even its brick and road initiative trade that goes into Russia and into Eastern Europe via the railway that they've built there, that even is slowing down dramatically in trade. And so they are feeling increasingly isolated. And so I see Xi Jinping, he has removed everybody from his inner leadership circle who would disagree with him or tell him news that he doesn't want to hear. And so I fear that he's not hearing what he needs to hear. And so that is a concern. And when that happens, typically leaders just kind of dig in their heels and kind of maybe increase the battle, so to speak.
And it's kind of hard when you look at some of the trade flows, when you have threats of tariffs or anticipation of thicker borders on the in trading lanes. Mm-hmm. We see front loading. We saw that in Canadian canola going to China last fall, Canadian potash going to the U.S. prior to the 25 planting season. That front loading can be a little bit of a distraction from like, oh, there's increased demand. Well, yeah, maybe over the course of the year, it's going to work out to about the same number.
Yeah, and even though USDA claims that's not why they left their balance sheets for corn and soybeans unchanged, even though the export pace is well above the seasonal pace needed to hit USDA's target, and corn it's almost 200 million bushels above. I think that there probably was some of that front loading ahead. Not to the extent perhaps that USDA thinks, but I think there was some, not just because of the tariffs, but because of the initiative that President Trump is proposing to charge a port fee on Chinese-built ships or ships coming from fleets that contain Chinese ships. And I think that has increased shipments of Sinograin purchased soybeans going to China. The tariffs are less of a deal with them because they're state-run, so they'd be paying themselves basically the tariffs. But the fees would be a totally different thing. And so I think there we've seen some front-loading of the demand ahead of that, not knowing exactly what that's going to be. But the whole industry right now is in turmoil, not knowing exactly where this is going to go.
Let's talk about that proposed idea of fees on Chinese ships or companies that have Chinese ships in their fleet. Details are just starting to come out this week. I had somebody tell me yesterday, Arlan, this is the most consequential policy out of the Trump administration in terms of impact on ag in comparison to anything that has been talked about so far.
Oh, yeah. The potential is there for impact to be far greater than the tariffs. I personally think that there will be a more pragmatic approach before it's implemented. I do believe that President Trump has the conviction that rebuilding our ship industry is necessary for national security and wants to do something to do that. But doing it as proposed would kill trade, significantly hurt it, because 55% of the ships out there right now are Chinese built. So most of the fleets have Chinese ships in them, let alone those that are directly Chinese flagged. And so, for example, I calculated up, if you got one Panamax ship carrying corn, that could be up to 57 cents per bushel increase in cost. That would dramatically impact the competitiveness of U.S. corn on the world market. And that's not just going to China. That would be a Chinese ship that might be going somewhere else to another customer or something like that. So I do think that there will be something more pragmatic come before it's actually applied. But until we hear what that is, there's going to be a lot of concerns. And we're already seeing shippers back away from making commitments or putting into the contract that the buyer has to be responsible for additional fees that may be charged.
And one thing I've picked up on in the fee on Chinese ships versus the overall tariff strategy, we've heard industry groups a little bit quieter on, let's see what President Trump's up to here negotiating. But on the ship fee, there's a lot more pushback and a lot louder pushback in terms of the consequences.
There is, and that's another reason I think that we'll end up with something more pragmatic, because I think cooler heads will prevail, and we'll see, we'll come to a more reasonable way to get to his end objective than just killing trade.
That was Arlan Suderman of StoneX. This whole concept of applying a fee to Chinese-made ships coming into U.S. ports, or even just a fleet that has Chinese ships in them to incentivize the rebuilding of the U.S. ship industry. It is facing a lot of criticism from U.S. industry. Indeed. And there's a Canadian component here. Pay attention. Important Canadian component. If the market finds a way. So if those fees go into place and it becomes a little bit cheaper to use a Canadian or Mexican port, we're going to see added pressure on the Canadian railway system and Canadian ports with U.S. goods trying to get out of the country or come into the country. So, and then add the layer of tariffs on top of this. This has a Canadian story to it. And if the U.S. futures market dips because of this, that also impacts Canadians because all of our goods are priced off of the U.S. futures market. Yeah, pay attention to this story. Indeed. We've got more coming up here on RealAg on the weekend, and Wasko is next. You're listening to 650 CKOM and 980 CJME.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomists, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomists with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Now, as concerning as everything is on the cropping side of the equation from a market perspective, beef is yay. Wowzers. I recently caught up on Friday with Ann Wasko at the Gateway Livestock Exchange for our beef market update we do every 2 weeks for RealAgriculture.com. Here's what she had to say.
Yeah, let's start there, Shaun. I mean, U.S. cattle markets continue to set new records. Last week, cash cattle in the U.S. were 210 in the south and 213 to 215 in the north. We traded a pile of cattle last week, so it's been a slow week this week to get going. It looks like we'll trade steady with those record levels from last week, but it's just been explosive. Futures markets, over the past 7 days, they've also, depending on what contract month or what category you're looking at, have also set new record highs. So markets are on fire. Here in Western Canada, the Alberta fat cattle market is trying its best to keep up. Or keep up with the Joneses, as you will. We did see dress prices this week in Alberta $5 a hundred higher, so that's going to be $4.55 to $4.60 delivered. There's been a little bit of live trade that'll be kind of over what we'll call the average. FOB the yard at $2.85 to $2.92, and those cattle will be heading south before April 2nd. So even with all that great news and those higher prices, even locally here, vis-a-vis the U.S. market, our basis on fat cattle is still very wide, very weak basis. So,
is that tariff related? Is that concern about the opportunity to transact, or what's driving that basis wider?
Again, I think it goes back to the supply piece where packers are running smaller kills here. They're buying as many as they need to. So it's kind of a demand piece where there's a few more cattle around than what packers really need, but they're running at smaller kills too. So our fed cattle kills down 10% this year.
Now, and that wider basis right now, is that seasonally to like the 5-year average? Where does that land?
Oh, we're at minus 35 right now. So
that's bigger than the 5-year average.
So a 5-year average should be more like minus 10.
Okay,
So,
well, fix that
so
over.
we're well off the mark, and so we won't talk about that anymore.
Okay.
Let's talk about feeder cattle that are also still, also running at record highs, over the last couple of weeks. Some classes of cattle a little eased off a bit this week, but generally speaking, near record highs over the last 2 weeks. Auction market volumes, I think we talked about this 2 weeks ago. They've been higher. Some markets running extra sales. The demand to sell cattle is huge. And so that is definitely a play in terms of tariff preparation, if you will, or getting ahead of the unknown. So producers have been selling cattle, selling into a very high market, but certainly selling high. The other piece of news that is also record high is choice box beef prices. So they had a new record high last night, $335.75 on the choice. That's almost $8 higher than last week. It's most of the strength is coming from the middle meats, and it's just explosive. Normally, if you look at when does the cutout seasonally make its annual high, it would be closer to May or June. So this is very, very strong, especially when production in the U.S. with their heavy carcass weights right now, they're almost running as much production as they were this time last year. So it's not a shortage of beef. It's certainly a big demand for beef is what the story is so far in the first quarter of 25.
It's incredible.
It's incredible.
And I think one of the challenges is you know this better than I do, but we always talk about how we need weather and we need markets, like prices for, that supply expansion. But we've got so high here that it's like, okay, these are too good of prices. I'm not.
I don't know if a cattle producer would say that, but
no.
Yeah.
But the prices are high enough to deter me from this is the time where I need to step in and I need to acquire pairs or I'm going to go into building mode. Is it or
Well, think about it, Shaun. I mean, if you're looking at, pairs last fall, we're bringing, let's say, $5,000 Canadian here in Western Canada, and calf prices are, it takes a couple of calves to pay for the cow. I mean, there hasn't been many times in our history where we've seen, that kind of relationship. So arguably, you could say, in that, just looking at from that scenario, that's not a bad time.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Whereas, other times it's taking 4 or 5 calves to pay for that cow. So It is a little different and it's a different way of looking at it. These are new numbers.
Don't say new. Dude, okay, whatever you do, do not.
No, I did not say that other word.
You didn't add the new to the other word that people do all the time. And that is just you might as well.
No, it's not that.
Okay, good.
It's not that. We still have a cattle cycle. I did want to just finish a little bit on, we did have a U.S. on feed report last Friday. And it did add a little bit of the bullishness feel to this week. So I did want to touch on that. The March 1 on feed report for the U.S. saw 2% fewer cattle on feed as of March 1. The bullish number came from the February placements. They were down 18%. And that goes back to still very slow imports of those Mexican feeder cattle into Texas and Kansas feed yards. Again, still going back to the screw issue that closed really from late November to late January, and they're still really just trying to get on their feet in terms of getting some cattle moved north. So most are saying that that's still going to be an issue here in March for placements into U.S. feedlots in the south as well.
We got some snow, wet snow in Western Canada. That's going to, inconveniently during calving time, but probably not going to refuse the moisture.
No, we're getting a little skiff here in the southwest Saskatchewan this morning. I know there's certainly more north of us.
Yeah.
We're not in the big band, but temperatures have been great leading into this. And so, at this point in time, especially for where we sit, we're going to take any moisture we can, for sure.
It's cold. That's more a problem during calving.
Yeah, and we're here in East End today. We're only -3 or -4 this morning, so it's not bad at all.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was Wasko with the Gateway Livestock Exchange, filling us in on what's going on in the cattle markets. Now, if you have any feedback, I would love to hear from you, fans of RealAg on the weekend. You just got to send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find Real Agriculture anywhere across all the different social media platforms. You're also more than welcome to call that RealAg feedback line. The number is 855-776-61 24/7. This has been a great opportunity to spend some time with you. Please check out RealAgriculture.com. And until next weekend, we'll talk to you later. Cheers, everybody.